Today, we are discussing one of my favorite topics, weight management and energy. This is one of my favorite discussions for a few reasons. I get to show people how they can save money by not wasting it on the diet industry. I get to talk about how making simple changes in your life can help you get over a weight plateau. I also get to tie many problems that people have with losing weight and their energy to mainly one hormone in the body. And last but not least, I get to have this discussion with my very talented and educated friend, Brianna Diorio, who is currently the global educator for Vitality Works. She has a Master's of Science in Human Nutrition and her own private practice for over 7 years. Welcome back to the show, Brianna.
Thank you so much for having me back. I think it's been about a year, but I'm so excited to be back
Yeah,
on the podcast.
I think it was back in July 2019. We talked about adrenal health back then. And so I wanted to bring you back on the show so we can take even a little bit deeper dive on how people can lose weight and get more energy by really understanding the impact of an adrenal hormone and what it does to our body. So let's start with telling the audience what this hormone is and why it impacts our weight and our energy.
Yes, the famous or infamous, however you want to refer to it, cortisol, which has gotten a lot of PR over the past few years, some positive and some negative. But, weight, I think, is a really confusing topic for a lot of people. And I think stress and cortisol, and they all really tie in with each other. And so, of course, it's confusing for people when they hear one day everything needs to be, we can never have stress again and we don't want cortisol at all, and the next day we hear that it's actually kind of important for our immune system and our stress response. So as with anything and everything in life, balance is key and the dose makes the poison. So that's a really tough one, especially in the all or nothing mentality that most of us live in, particularly when we're trying to approach weight loss. We get to a point of frustration where we're like, I'll do whatever it takes to be able to take this selfie and look good and fit into these jeans. And that's generally when things backfire and we actually cause more of a stress cascade, which kind of causes cortisol to become even more unbalanced in the body.
Exactly right. And that's what I'm always talking to clients about. In almost every one of my seminars, I think we talk about cortisol to some degree because I think it's that important. I know doctors aren't really testing it very well or consistently or even by the right form of testing because we believe that salivary is probably the better way to look at it than blood testing. But overall, it's that important when you're trying to lose weight, when you want more energy. I think a big focus needs to be turned towards how do we control cortisol. But let's start with what are the main things that drive cortisol to go high in our body in the first place?
Totally. So I would say the easiest kind of low bearing fruit is stress. And I say that because stress encompasses so much. I mean, we can have mental, emotional stuff going on. We could have physical trauma in the body. We could have chemical and biochemical stuff. And then, of course, even inflammation responses. So that could be from a food allergy, an additive, if we're taking over the counter medications, if there's hidden parasites, sleep deprivation, general allergies. So all of those kind of fall under the bucket of what's going on with stress. And again, stress it's not necessarily a bad thing. And cortisol, again, isn't a bad thing. It's actually there to help us survive. It's a part of our survival mechanism. But when we have too high or even too low, it can become difficult because a lot of the symptoms, which again is, I've said this a lot in the past, is how our body talks to us. Many of the symptoms look the same. You might be tired and wired. You might have, quote, brain fog. You might have digestive issues. You might have that little tummy pouch because we actually have cortisol receptors in almost every single tissue in our body. We have a high density of them actually in our stomach area as well. Again, because it's kind of that protective mechanism. And whether we have real stress going on, fake stress, made up, our body is releasing cortisol amongst many hormones and other neurotransmitters and this chemical cocktail that goes on in the body in an attempt to, number one, help us survive and also to make us listen. And so we generally kind of just keep pushing down on the gas pedal and we don't listen. And that's when we can get things like weight loss being stalled. We can become really tired. We can actually end up gaining more weight, all because of adaptive physiology and our body being like, I don't care how you look good naked. I want you to survive and be happy and healthy. And you're not listening otherwise. And that's kind of where cortisol can get out of control. And then that can affect other hormones and other things, like blood pressure and hydration. So you look puffy, right? What's going on with your kidneys. So again, what's going on with water balance and retention in the body. So all of that can affect even things like our cravings and our sugar, our blood sugar levels. All of that goes back to the adrenals and HPA and cortisol, which is this vicious cycle of, which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Exactly. I totally agree. Stress and inflammation are probably the two biggest drivers of this hormone, but you hit on a great point that your blood sugar is everything too, as well, especially for people that are skipping meals or going too long without eating. That cortisol mechanism will actually push your sugar up until you eat again. So I know outside of intermittent fasting, a lot of people have this blood sugar dysregulation going on. And just by how you eat sometimes can actually help better or at least control this cortisol mechanism. I mean, this fight or flight response that most people are living in, like you said. So I think it's very important to make sure that we're focusing on cortisol as much as we can, which means you need to focus on your stress, your inflammation, and the way we eat, right?
Yeah. And sleep. I mean, sleep is also a huge component that people forget about because, again, anything, stresses your body, or I should say, inflammation is your body's non-specific response to stress. And so we don't, it's kind of like when you had a fire drill back in the day in school. Even if your teacher was like, hey guys, we're having a fire drill at 11 p.m., you have to go through the motions anyway. So your body's like, oh, you didn't sleep last night? Well, guess what? We're going to still respond the same way as if you were in a serious car crash, or people always go to the example of running away from a tiger. And I joke and say, like, we're not running away from tigers anymore. We're generally running away from our own thoughts. And so, regardless, that induces the entire inflammatory cascade and the stress response. And then us stressing about stress, which is a whole other issue unto itself.
So I totally agree. When we want to lose weight, though, what are you starting to tell people to? What are the first three things they probably need to start with? What would you say the top three are?
My opening sentence is always be boring with your health. So go to sleep, get some movement in. It doesn't mean you have to kill yourself in the gym for 70,000 hours, and focus on quality whole real food. If you want to get extra credit, you can do things like focusing on your hydration and stress management, of course, having a nice balance of strength training and interval training. So there's different layers, but I would say definitely, go to bed, try and focus on eating whole real foods and trying to, manage that stress and just be boring with your health.
I totally agree. Yes, I mean, sleep is so important. And you're exactly right. We need to make sure people are sleeping, getting to bed on time, getting rid of the blue light earlier in the night, whatever you got to do to start to create that circadian pattern, because cortisol has a circadian pattern. And if you keep messing that up,
Yeah.
it's definitely going to be interfering with your sleep as well. So what diets do you see on your side, since you've been in practice for 7 years now? What diets do you see that really help people with this control of cortisol?
So unfortunately, we are now living in this world where we want this one size fits all approach. And I kind of tell people you should be a diet agnostic. So, like, any one diet, I don't think should be permanent because we as humans are super dynamic and so is our health. So, just because keto, paleo, fasting, whatever it is, they're all great in their own unique way. But what worked for you a year ago may not work for you now, depending on stuff like your sleep bucket, your stress bucket, your inflammation bucket. So I would say there are some general basic principles that we can all agree on, because if you talk to one expert in a nutrition field about this diet, they're gonna, come and say some negative stuff about everybody, has their own beliefs, and that's fine.
That's
But
right.
I think we could all agree that we could probably all eat some more plant compounds. So I always joke and just say, shove all the things you can in your, your ninja bullet or, your smoothie as you can. Try and eat like one really big salad a day. Try and get, quality clean water in at least half your body weight in ounces. Try and remove things that have really long laundry lists of ingredients that, maybe are 5 ingredients or more. And then I always tell people, like, super simple, you should be able to look down at your plate ideally and identify where things came from. So, like, these strawberries grew outside and this, this chicken thigh came from a chicken. And also be wary of, just health buzzwords. So just because it's keto or paleo or organic doesn't mean that you can still eat a bunch of keto cookies or a bunch of paleo pancakes. You have to still be aware of your calories at the end of the day and your balance for you. And again, if you are somebody who has a lot of hormonal stressors in the body, certain people shouldn't be, like, fasting for a really long period of time, or certain people do better with it. So it kind of just I always tell people you have to meet yourself where you are, which unfortunately that's not the answer people want, but that's the truth.
No, you're right. There's no one size fits all for anybody, and that's the whole point. So I totally agree with that. That you got to figure out where that person's at, or if they're able to control their blood sugar and do a fasting. Some people can't do that, but other people can do keto just fine. So it's just finding what
Right.
works for you. But mainly, the big takeaway message, in my opinion, is start doing things that control your blood sugar. Like you said, make sure we got good quality proteins, good fats, good veggies. Those are the big macros I
Yeah.
think we need to focus more on, and just trying to reduce the carbs. It doesn't have to be keto, but basically just reducing those sugars and carbs to regulate your blood sugar better, because that helps regulate cortisol even more so. So we know diet's important. Sleep's important. We got to reduce stress with more exercise and movement at least. What about supplementation? Let's get into that category. What things are you suggesting to people to help regulate cortisol and their stress levels?
So I think adaptogens are, a really popular kind of subcategory of supplements because what they do is they help your body non-specifically adapt to stress. And again, depending on why you're so stressed out, if you're so stressed and you're so tired, then you can't go to the gym or you can't make dinner, then you might need something that's going to be more stimulating and nutritive in nature. If you're the kind of person who's you know, super spaz, type A, go, go, go all the time, and you can't actually focus and calm down, then you're going to burn out and then you're probably going to eventually not get to where you need to be. So I think adaptogens are a really great jumping off point. Some, I think popular ones that we've seen over the years that have gotten a lot of attention would be things like, your rhodiolas, your ginsengs, your holy basils, and then even some things like, ashwagandha and eleuthero, I would say are some really good kind of neutral, some more stimulating ones. And then depending if you're kind of on that other end of I need to calm things down, that's when you can do some more stuff like the kava and the valerian and skullcap and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that those are some really good ones from a stress standpoint. And then when we're talking about blood sugar stuff, there's some really good research on different things like berberine and alpha lipoic acid, cinnamon, and some of these more mono compounds that actually work on these enzymes that regulate how our insulin receptors function and turning certain genes on and off and how certain proteins fold. So I think it's a combination of both of those.
You mentioned berberine for blood sugar. I mean, that's a popular herb right now, and we're seeing fantastic results with people. Can you do a little bit more deeper dive in berberine and why it's working for so many people?
Definitely. So berberine has gotten a lot of attention as well over the years. It's a naturally occurring alkaloid. So alkaloids are kind of bitter in nature, a really popular plant compound. It's found in things like, Oregon grape and turmeric. You can find it in golden seal. So a lot of people, when they're using it from the golden seal Oregon grape, maybe are using it for more of an antimicrobial kind of benefit. But it's been really popular in Chinese and Indian medicine for like over 3,000 years. And what's really cool is that it works particularly on an enzyme in the body called AMPK. And so some people will refer to this enzyme as kind of like your youth enzyme. There's some really cool research on longevity genes and being able to turn on AMPK. And basically, what it does is it kind of helps to regulate like these molecular targets in the body. So it kind of goes and tells your cells what to do and helps to do things like, balance out your blood sugar, plays a really big role in energy metabolism and actually activating the uptake of things like fatty acids and glucose. So you don't have that blood sugar roller coaster all day long. So there's some really, really cool research on that, particularly for insulin sensitivity as well.
So you're really seeing a big difference with people who are just having trouble. It helps the body regulate blood sugar better. It's a good way to say it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I've even seen good research in berberine for women who have PCOS, where the reason for PCOS for them might be that they're more androgen forward and they're having insulin resistance. So that's kind of actually how I originally researched berberine back in the day, as I had a client, and that kind of was one of the pieces to her healing protocol.
Okay. Yeah, berberine, I'm seeing fantastic results, but I do want to ask you one question. I do have a small group of people who they are thinking they're reacting to it by having loose bowels when they take berberine. Have you seen this?
I mean, it is antimicrobial in action. So that would be like if you took golden seal for too long or Oregon grape. So for them, it could maybe be they've been on it for too long, any of those really strong antimicrobials. So I would say like after 2 weeks, give it a break and see how you feel if you come back after, another 2 weeks. So 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off kind of
So
thing.
just cycling, it might help those issues too as well. Is it
Mhm.
known to kill good bacteria as well as bad bacteria?
No, it has this kind of mechanism of action where it can really work more so on kind of crowding out more so that quote bad bacteria and actually making sure that the polyliposaccharides and some of those bad things don't actually stick to the epithelial lining in your cells. So it can actually kind of help to balance out the gut flora a little bit more.
So could it be said then that when they're having a reaction like loose bowels, that they're really just almost like a detoxification effect?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's with anything too. If you're having that, again, if you're having a lot of bowel movement going on, there could be other stuff that your body is either trying to get rid of, or again, that's generally your body trying to expel something. So you could be doing other things and make sure it's a quality supplement. So just because, right, like more than anybody, just because you bought berberine online for $3 cheaper doesn't mean that the quality is actually there. You want to make sure that the berberine, is good from a good manufacturer, a good supplier, and all of that. And there might be hidden, fillers and additives in there that you don't know about that could be causing a reaction. You don't always know, and people don't always think to be label literate as much when it comes to supplements and nutraceuticals.
No, that's a great point, Brianna. So we got berberine that helps us control blood sugar, ashwagandha and ginsengs to help us with the stress response. What about the inflammation? What do we do for that?
Yeah. So inflammation, another one. I feel really bad for inflammation because people like hate it now and everything's anti-inflammatory
It's a
everything.
bad
And
word,
that's
yeah.
yeah, it's definitely not the goal again, because inflammation is such an important process of our immune response, of the healing process in the body. But again, it all goes back to balance. We don't want to just be having it running rampant like a child that is basically not being supervised. So inflammation, first things first is going to be the diet pieces. So what you're putting at the end of your fork, and also the thoughts we're thinking. I always joke about pro-inflammatory people and pro-inflammatory thoughts, sleeping, all of that kind of stuff. But the same things. I mean, there's ginger and turmeric. I would say get a lot of press for being able to regulate the inflammatory response in the body. But a lot of these adaptogens as well do the same thing. So like the eleuthero, rhodiola, there's really cool research. Even some of those more relaxing botanicals like kava and stuff like that can kind of work on some of those COX enzymes that sort of help relax things in the body. Same thing with holy basil, and a lot of those nice calming mushrooms as well. So things like reishi and chaga, anything that's going to sort of just like put us into a little bit more of a chill mode can help again with that inflammation response if it's from stress. If you're having inflammation from maybe not sleeping enough, or again, if there's issues going on because you have toxicity in the body, then you kind of have to take a little bit deeper of a look.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Kava, you talked about kava. Your company introduced me to something called kava coladas or kava cocktails. Tell me what the
Yeah.
recipe of that is, because it's really been. I remember taking that when I was at the farm, and I just loved it.
Yeah. So kava is one of my absolute favorites. It's a fan favorite of Mitch Coben, who's the founder of Vitality Works as well. But if you've ever tasted kava, it's a part of the pepper family. So it is actually very spicy and bitter. They call it in Hawaii, they call it awa, which actually means like bitter. And so if you're taking it as a tincture itself, it doesn't taste amazing. So Mitch has created this kava colada, which is basically you take about you would take like your ninja bullet or whatever you're making smoothies in, and you put some frozen pineapple chunks in there. So you could do about like a cup of that. You would do about a half a cup of pineapple juice, and then get some full fat coconut cream or coconut milk, and you would add maybe a half a cup of that with a couple of tincture droppers full of your kava, and then you mix that all up. You can add a little bit of stevia if you would like, as if it's too bitter for you, and then you just have a silly goose time, and relax and unwind with some kava cocktails.
Well, I'm telling you, if you are stressed out there, making a kava colada is the bomb. You got to try it out. It does help you relax and deal with stress much easier. I just remember not having a care in the world. That's almost dangerous, but it's what it sort of felt like. I really enjoyed when I was doing the kava coladas. Well, any
I
other
tell
points that
people
you want
like
to put
when
up?
I like 1.2 spicy margaritas deep, like living my best life. There's the kind of like that feeling, like a little bit of just like a little bit of the edge off, but you're still present and you can just relax and kind of just shut your mind off and just, like be able to be where you actually are and breathe a little bit. So it's really nice for that.
That's right, Brianna. Any other tips that you want to point out today before we go?
I think just vitamin R and vitamin C, meaning relaxation and chill, right? So I think a lot
Love
of
it.
us can use way more of that in our lives right now. And again, just don't stress about stress. I think sometimes people get so hyper focused on, is this protocol working? Is this nutrient working? I was supposed to take it at 10 a.m. and it's 10:07. I messed up. Like it's all about balances and averages is what I tell people. You got to just keep getting up to bat, one swing at a time. Eventually you'll hit a home run and you'll be fine. So just try and have some big picture mentality when it comes to your health, particularly around things like weight loss. And, it's got to be a sustainable and maintainable lifestyle, because things like willpower, it's a very limited resource and you will run out of that really quickly. So you have to know why you're doing it for the right reasons, and really just, be patient with the process, and, like, give some time while your body is adjusting to all the changes that are happening.
Vitamin C, vitamin R. I love it, Brianna. That's why I love having you on the show. You always bring great insight and information. Thanks so much for being here again today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Healthy Approach podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe because it helps out the channel. If you want to learn more about how to manage your weight naturally, or you just need more energy, go to sunflowershoppe.com. That's shop with 2 P's and an E, or visit us at one of our 3 locations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Until next time, stay healthy.